So welcome everybody to our webinar entitled Digital Transformation through BizDevSecOps, Value Stream Optimization. My name is Kuldip Sandhu, and I am joined by my colleague Shyam Valand today. And most importantly, thank you for attending this webinar and committing an hour and 15 of your hour and 15 minutes of your valuable time. Just a bit of protocols and a bit of kind of admin. We are recording the webinar and we will be sharing it in the LinkedIn event online page, and we will also be sharing our thoughts and views as a blog on this when we have completed the webinar session. Today we are going to be exploring a number of things. Just to give you a flavour of the agenda, we're going to do some introductions. I'll introduce myself, give you some background on me and why I have been working in this area. And I'm delighted to be having Shyam here, who's our DevOps expert, who's going to introduce himself. We've got very rich presentation content and some live case studies. We've got 50 minutes for that, and we are actively going to be giving you a chance to answer questions and have a discussion. We are going to also be using some live polling technology, and you can see there at the bottom it says survey www.slido.do. That is the Slido technology application which we're going to use to administer those surveys as we go through the presentation. Could I ask everybody to make a note of that website address and the event code, which is #80639, because we will be asking you to participate actively using that. And Shyam is also going to be sharing that via the chat function if he hasn't done already.
Yep, done already.
Yep, superb, thank you. So the agenda, just in terms of the introductions, as I said, my name's Kuldip. I have been working in the IT industry for something like 25 years, lots of business, digital and IT transformation expertise. I've worked in industry, I've worked in management consultancy, and I've done a lot of senior IT executive roles. My most recent 2-year stint was as the interim head of technology at the Excel Convention Centre. And as you can see in my profile page, there's a whole set of logos of either previous employers or clients I've worked with before. My expertise lies in that bridging the gap between business and technology in the digital transformation space. And I really have done a lot of transforming the IT function work, and I've actually started off in the kind of development world, and that's why I have such a strong focus on what we're going to be talking about today around BizDevSecOps. Shyam, do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself as well?
Thank you, Kuldip. So my name is Shyam Valand. I've not been around the business as long as Kuldip. Just sort of catching on to his coattails there.
Yeah.
I've worked for a number of organizations, as you can see from all the labels I have on the slide, in a number of different roles, all involving change at different levels of scale. So from overall organizational transformations to small bits of improvements. I do have a mixture of both working as an employee and working freelance. My core area of expertise is IT service management, and recently, over the last 5 years, I've been moving more into the DevOps space, trying and really figuring out how to bridge the gap between DevOps and IT service management.
Superb. Thank you for that, Shyam. So just give you a little bit more detail on what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to set the context. I'm going to talk a little bit about digital transformation, what it means, and my way of describing it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think COVID-19 has done in terms of digital disruption. We're going to then go into a survey that Shyam will run for us, and then we're going to talk about the BizDevSecOps maturity model and the underpinning 6 pillars. It's a model that me and Shyam have been working on for over the last 2 years across a number of clients. We then have another survey. We then are going to go into some real world case studies, one of mine, and a couple of Shyam's that he's been doing with some financial institutions. Another survey, and then we're just going to try to wrap it up with what the benefits of BizDevSecOps are, and then into who owns this, and also some key takeaways, and open it to Q&A. Now, we actively encourage you to ask questions. You have the chat function to do that. We, whilst everybody's on mute until the Q&A session, we will capture those questions and try to answer them as fully as we can when we get to the end of the presentation material. And so without any further ado, I'm going to now jump into the first slide. Some of you might have seen in my previous webinars, and so I think this is something like my 7th or 8th one. I feel like I'm a bit of a veteran, but I need to bring across some of the concepts that I've been talking to, and some of these are certainly before COVID hit us. A lot of the discussions I was having with C-level executives was around the rapid adoption of technology. A lot of them were talking to me, well, I can't keep up to pace with the changes in technology, new trends, new initiatives. And if you can see on the left-hand side, I just tried to give you a feel of that rapid adoption of change. So it took 68 years for the airline industry to get to 50 million users. Whereas if you look at Facebook and Twitter, it took 3 years and 2 years. But for the children's Pokemon Go game, it took 19 days to get to 50 million users. What that is showing us, as you can see on the right-hand side, the Martech's law, that technology adoption and change is increasing at an exponential rate. The challenge we have is that organizations don't change at that same pace. They change in a logarithmic rate. And what happens is that you get a gap appearing between that technology change adoption and the change that organizations can absorb. And what happens is that the organizations need to be reset, and therefore they end up embarking on a transformation journey, which can be quite radical. Our experiences of working in this space shows that in order to cultivate a high-performing agile organization, there's kind of key 6 steps or 6 pillars that need to be satisfied. You need to understand what your business strategy is, or your digital strategy, and have an underpinning organizational design that breaks away silos. The business vision, values, and underlying principles need to be then embedded in the organizational culture. People need to be actively engaged. There's plenty of data out there that shows us that 70–80% of the workforce are predominantly disengaged, and this is where you need management and leadership to install the ambition and incentives to ensure that staff are motivated and engaged, and they're developing their careers as they go along. On top of that, you just need the appropriate level of governance and funding to support all your portfolio of initiatives. And importantly, I think people want to work in a way that they can show their talents and skills, and ways of working are very, very important. And that's why I've put that right in the middle. And today's presentation is really around a way of working or a culture that gives us IT and business agility to deliver products and services in an agile way. With that said, I think the second slide is just to say that COVID has, whilst it has had a financial and human and social impact negatively, from a technology perspective, it's kind of brought technology to the forefront. And in many cases, it's accelerated the pace of digital transformation. A lot of organizations, and this is not across every sector, some sectors are suffering significantly. Many of the sectors that I've been talking to are now moving forward with their cloud initiatives, or their RPA initiatives, RPA or robotic process automation, or they are embarking on initiatives that will help them become more effective and more efficient. And these organizations really are pivoting, and this word pivot has been used quite a lot, and I wanted to bring that to context because digital transformation is about looking at your business model, looking about how you're delivering your products and your services to deliver value to you, not only your shareholders but your customers, and then developing your internal capabilities and competencies according to your strategy and the products and services that you deliver to your customers. And COVID has accelerated the pace of change from a digital perspective. And let me give you a quick example of that. We had to rapidly move to remote working. So that digital workplace transformation, where we shifted to 80% people working remotely from home, which is now continuing on, was done in a very agile and adaptive way. And IT departments had the opportunity to really do that in a quick, at a rapid pace of change and learning as they were proceeding. I've worked, as I said, I worked in the events industry. There's been a rapid shift to online hybrid events where they're using now technology platforms to create content online quickly and rapidly so that you can have a combination of an event which can be being streamed virtually anywhere across the world with very little presence on site, if any, needed. Only final point to make around here is that I was around, as Shyam said, I'm a little bit older than Shyam and less hair. I was around in the 2008 financial crisis. And what I saw then was that a lot of organizations who adapted quickly and invested in innovation, and that could be technology innovation, were the ones that succeeded in the long term or survived. They were survived, and not only did they survive, they thrived, and they actually went on to deliver successfully in their business strategies. So what I would say to you is COVID, whilst has had a negative impact in many scenarios, from a digital perspective, it really has given the opportunity for IT to enable that digital change. And the way that I try to express digital transformation is, this was very similar to pre-COVID. The battleground has always been how can you actually, in your sector, in your market, have a business model that enhances that customer experience to either enable growth or aid efficiency. And technology is the enabler. It can actually give you some competitive advantage if you're unable to deploy it at pace ahead of your competitors and differentiate your offerings, be it an organization or an institution. There's been a lot of trends, and this slide is just a view of some of the things that have been taking place over the last 5 to 10 years. You know, the need to move to a multi-tenancy kind of cloud environment has accelerated. Big data analytics and data science has come to the fore. So cybersecurity has become really important for business continuity and resilience. Computing everywhere, IoT is becoming important for capturing data and sensor technology, and machine learning, robotics for RPA. All those trends, plus the cultural stuff and all the things I've defined around digital transformation, has an impact on the business, and it has an impact on IT. And IT has always been a challenge in many scenarios. A lot of the reasons I've earned my living is trying to get IT and the IT department aligned to that business strategy and to give the efficiency. And what we will go into in a minute is how we can get that IT and business agility through BizDevSecOps. But just as you can see at the bottom, just giving my definition of digital transformation being the business model reinvention and bringing in technology at pace to give that differentiation. With that said, I'm going to hand over to Shyam in a minute, because he's going to take us through the first poll on our first question.
Okay, thank you, Kuldip. So if we can go into, please, the question we have. Sorry, I'm just going to try and bring this up on my side.
And everybody should see, again, the link and the event code.
Okay, so the first question we have, and this is a life poll, is what are the main drivers for digital transformation in your organization? So you can choose more than one response.
And Shyam, can you see my?
But that's a question. What's the main? Yes, I can.
Yep. So please, everybody, if you have got to Slido, you got the first question there. Please add your answer, and I can see the little bars going up and down. So that means people are definitely answering, at least 4. We'll give you at least 10 more seconds. It will be great, even if you're not a business leader, if you're an IT leader, we really would love your participation in this survey. It just makes the experience richer, and the data gives us the insight, I suppose, right? Yeah, I think the emerging one at the top there is increasing revenue. Well, I think digital transformation is a competitive arena, and you want to differentiate your offerings so that you're ahead of your competition, and you're increasing your revenue and your profitability. And you can only really do that if you have great customer service, right? As well, that goes hand in hand, I think. Sometimes. What's your any views here, Shyam, from your perspective?
Yeah, this is the one thing, isn't it? We keep seeing this over and over again. This is the main theme is, digital transformation is one of the requirements to be able to, or one of the things, one of the factors for increasing revenue. And that's what we're seeing in the polls here. And also increasing customer expectation. That's another trend we're seeing in the market just now. And of course, reducing costs, right? That's what this is about, especially in the current day and age. Income streams, revenues are dropping because of COVID. And the first thing organizations have to do is to cut costs. So yeah, it kind of ties into what we're seeing.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense to me as well. I think we shall move on. Yep.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you everybody for that. We'll have another survey coming up soon. Back to our slides, and I am going to hand over to Shyam, who's going to talk about DevOps.
Okay, thank you, Kuldip. Okay, so for those of you who haven't, you've probably heard the word DevOps being used quite a lot. There are a lot of different definitions for DevOps, interestingly enough, even after 10 years plus of maturity. But there are a couple of themes coming through. DevOps is a cultural shift. It is a culture, some words we use, a movement, a philosophy, an organizational mindset for continuously improving value. And these are the themes that come up. So what we're seeing is, organizations invest in DevOps, and all they end up doing is buying a bunch of tools to automate the software development lifecycle. But there's a lot more to it than that, and we're getting involved in quite a few conversations with CXOs where they're saying, look, we've done our tooling stuff, but it's not quite giving the results we want to see. And yes, that's why, because there is a cultural change that needs to happen that goes along hand in hand with DevOps. One of the questions that you get asked quite a lot is, is there a place for DevOps and IT service management to work together? And yes, there is. They are very closely related. There are relevances and handoffs between DevOps and ITSM in this day and age. So I've got a quote there from Mr. Gene Kim, the man himself, that, they're a perfect cultural match, right? So we have some of the sort of people in the industry just recognizing the benefits and value of both DevOps and IT service management.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that definition, I'm going to extend that definition because whilst I love DevOps, and I think it's a fantastic movement, the cultural change that's been driven in development operations is in IT. And IT cannot and it should not ever act as a silo. And that's why when I've had many discussions with Shyam, and I said, look, we need to extend it. One, we need to add on the security aspects, because cybersecurity is such a big issue. From phishing emails to extraction of data loss and DDoS attacks, we need to build in security early in the kind of requirements phase. So I said to Shyam, let's add sec in for security, but more importantly than that, not demeaning security, I wanted to add the biz bit. The biz bit stands for business, and this is why I think I wanted to show this slide, is that BizDevSecOps is about gluing and collaborating and working very closely with business to get not just get the value of IT agility working with business. And the way that we've wanted to bring this across is that you still have to have your digital strategy, your business strategy, your vision, and your leaders in your organization, but they need to buy into it and they need to sponsor this. And they need to be actively involved in the transformation to become agile. Agile in the large A and agile in the small a. Now, agile in the large A can mean working with the business in developing your product backlog, to working with and then working with the smaller agile techniques around Kanban to SAFe to Scrum, and working very closely with the business as you develop your product and your service. It's done in an iterative way. It's visible. It's done in small increments. So you're reducing risk, you're increasing transparency and visibility, and you're then taking those features and functions into development, who can develop those in an iterative way and show the visibility, and work with, and then development working very closely with operations in DevOps, who then are both understand the constraints and the challenges on each side. So operations understand that development want to bring in features, but operations want stability. So, but the business wants agility and stability. So you've got to glue that up, and that's what BizDevSecOps is about. It's about gluing up the value stream of a product and services in a horizontal way, so that you're reducing the blockers, the waste across that value stream, with business development, IT operations working in tandem. And the data there from the IDC shows you that the DevOps movement, it's been more than 5 years old. A lot of, we'll get onto it in a little bit when Shyam talks about high-performing organizations who adopted DevOps. There is a significant market share and value in this area. It's tripling from 5 billion to about 15 billion, over the last from 2018 to 2023. And we need to develop that culture so that we are working seamlessly across the business into IT. And that can really aid, if you do the value stream mapping, you're making things lean, you're automating. Automating could be in the business side, but also in developing your CI/CD pipelines and automating your software development lifecycle. That gives you another layer of efficiency. And that brings that BizDevSecOps value stream into focus. Over to you, Simon.
Okay. Thank you. So Kuldip's mentioned, getting different parts of the organization together to work in these value streams. So what would this look like in a typical operating model type structure? So what I've got here is what I call a cookie diagram. And all these different colored blobs you can see are what I call the Smarties, and the little chocolate pieces you see on it. But essentially what I'm trying to illustrate here is in an enterprise, you can have these cross-functional teams which are all aligned towards specific value streams or products. And the constituents of the team, this cross-functional team, will be made up of different members from different parts of the organization. So typically would see someone from the business, in this case represented by product development, project management. We have some data people in there. We have developers, of course, writing the code. We have someone from enterprise architect who could either be a business analyst or actually doing the architecture themselves. Somebody from ops, representing, sort of providing the platform or the infrastructure itself. And all these teams work collaboratively together, focused on delivering value within their product stream. That there are no handoffs, they're all working collaboratively with the sole intention of making sure that the releases are going out the door safely and meeting the business requirements. We have typically we'll have these cross-functional teams, but we'll also have what we call a platform team, which is really the supporting layer, if you want to call it the infrastructure layer, which will contain all the bits and pieces that needed. For example, network, the information security standards themselves, some change management, some engineering, and so on to provide this peripheral envelope in which the cross-functional teams operate. Thank you, Kuldip.
Okay.
So typically what we see when we get involved in these sort of DevOps type transformations is we start off with a current state where there are lots of teams who are working in silos. They're all aligned to business verticals, and they're working independently. They're all using their own tools, their own systems, and it's just really a complete jumble. And as we start going through the transformation journey, there's an intermediate phase where we get teams to start adopting new ways of working. There's a cultural change. There's a process change. There's thinking about things like Agile and Lean and DevOps. And at the same time, we get these teams to start forming little groups that are aligned towards specific value streams of products. And we also start looking at things like automating the kind of things that go on the workflow, whether it's continuous testing, continuous integration, which is CI, CD, which is either continuous delivery or continuous deployment, depending on how advanced you are, and even things like site reliability engineering, bringing this in to try and automate some of the repetitive issues that come up, and then just remove the toil that engineering teams face. And the end state you want to get to is really an agile organization where the teams are all aligned around business value and product value streams, and they're supported by things like investment, IT investment, really focused on delivering value for the product value streams. Thank you, Kuldip.
Okay. Just to now move on to the pillars of the BizDevSecOps maturity model that we've developed. From just a couple of slides that Shyam has gone through, we brainstormed together what are the key pillars, and what we've adopted was the I would say, which is we grabbed the principles around CALMS, because that exists already. CALMS stands for culture, automation, lean, measurement, sharing. And what we added to that was the leadership and strategy kind of pillar. Culture, well, it's absolutely, I'll talk a little bit about that as I show you the maturity model, but these are the 6 kind of pillars that underpin that maturity model, and they are really all need to work in tandem to give us the value in ensuring that BizDevSecOps works collectively. So let me just show you the maturity model with those pillars in mind. What you can see on here is a maturity model that shows those pillars. They've got your strategy and leadership, you've got your culture, your automation, your lean, your measurement, and your feedback. And you're trying to turn your organization from being a chaotic, disorganized, fragmented organization to a digitally enabled, business value focused, outcome-based digital organization. And what that requires is an iterative cultural change. And this maturity module says that at the basic level, you know that you need to change, and you need to do it. You need to change your culture to give that agility. You need to then move to a competent management level, where you get to a level of standardization, and you can't start becoming aligned to the business. And you know that you can start thinking about automating in your DevOps world, and then thinking about how you're going to use that automation and lean and get rid of toil into the value stream optimization. And then when you get in that level 3 around being defined and proficient, where you get to level 4, where you're measuring and you're providing feedback. Now, feedback doesn't mean it happens at level 4. It can happen as you go along across every value stream of every activity to give us that continuous improvement. And when you get to past level 4, you've got IT and business aligned, capabilities and value streams being optimized, and we're moving into seamless integration, and now innovation is absolutely paramount, and and you're bringing that in every aspect of working life, as far as can be possible. And that's the maturity model. We've got obviously underlying not just spreadsheet but tool that allows us to do that maturity assessment for organizations. And I've been working with an organization where we've been showcasing this and putting them on the map. And what the beauty of this model is, it allows you to work out where you are today, your starting point, but it also then allows you to work out where you want to be. And from where you are to where you want to be becomes your kind of strategy or your roadmap for that change. Okay, so with that said, Shyam, it's back to you to talk about our second question on the poll.
Okay, thank you, Kuldip. So the second question we have today is, how far along your BizDevSecOps journey is your organization? So just really try and get a feel as to whether you've started or how far along your journey the attendees are.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It should appear on the second survey there. It says, how far along your DevOps or BizDevSecOps journey is your organization? Wow. That's only one. It's only one. A couple of people now. That wasn't statistically meaningful, that one.
Hopefully get a few more respondents for this one. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, we'll give it just a few more seconds. Yeah, okay. Well, look, everybody can see the results there. Close to 60% have not started that journey. And what I'd like to put in perspective is that DevOps as a movement is probably between 5 and 10 years old. Okay. And we've introduced the sec piece, which is kind of merging, and the biz piece. So it doesn't surprise me, but it's good to see that organizations are planning to, or are their way through. That's fantastic. And everybody is considering it. So any thoughts from you, Shyam, on that?
Yeah, so this is the one of the reasons for on the webinar, isn't it? To try to familiarize some of our audience about what is BizDevSecOps. You'll traditionally hear the terminology DevOps being used, but really it should be called BizDevSecOps. As we've seen, it's not just about IT anymore. It is about pulling in business and ensuring that the security aspects of your software development are all considered as part of the DevOps transformation. And that's what we're trying to explain here. It's good to see that there are some attendees who are planning to do it, and as you're saying, and of course, there's a few as well who are en route to the BizDevSecOps journey.
Thank you for that input. We'll have another. We've got another one coming up, so we're back to our presentation. And thank you for your answering that survey. We'll move into some real live case studies. Just want to make sure before I do that, everybody can see my screen. Can you just verify that, Shyam?
Yep, it's coming up. There we go.
Yep. So we've got 3 case studies, which will try to bring some of this to life. The first one is around IT service management, and then that's going to be me, and then I'll hand over to Shyam around agile change management and automating incident management. Okay, so I'm going to fire off. The first, I don't want to blind you with words here, but the first slide is very dense. It's not intended to give you loads of words, but this is a case study of some work that I did a couple of years ago, actually 2-3 years ago, with British Transport Police, and I was helping them with their IT service management program. And I'd got them to adopt ITIL v3. I know we're ITIL 4 now, but the same principles applied. And effectively, I set up their IT service management program to establish best practice processes within IT. And we started off in the service operations arena. And people who are ITSM practitioners will know that when you start ITSM, you should typically start off with the service desk and incident service request management and move into change management. I think that's pretty commonly known. And this example is around how we improve their change management processes. But before I just go into that, I just wanted to make a statement here. If you haven't got a process defined, it can't be repeatable. If your processes are not repeatable, you can't measure them and you can't automate them. And if you can't measure them, you can't improve them. That always sticks with me. And thank you, Shyam, for sharing that with me quite recently. So on change management, what we did, and this goes with most technology systems rollout, any process rollouts, any change process. You really have to educate your end users, be it the business or IT. And what we started with change management is to ensure that they understood what best practice was. As a best practice, ITIL v3 change management process, and we tried to really get them to understand why it's important to manage change, because change gives you complexity, it can give you risk, it can give you an impact on your business, a negative impact on your business, and it can bring down systems. I worked in the financial sector in RBS, I'll tell you, where a minor upgrade or a minor change to a piece of software brought down hundreds of environments and many customer redress. And because they hadn't managed the installation of a change, it was a minor software upgrade. And so change is really important to manage the severity and the impact and disruption that can happen to you, not only in IT, but the whole business. And it needs to be planned, and it needs to be controlled, and it needs to be successful. If you have to roll back a change, there's something wrong. And what we did when I was at British Transport Police, we went through the stages of creating a request, what do you have to do around assessing and evaluating a change, the authorization and the governance around it, how you implement the change and who does that, and the roles and responsibilities, and how you close that off to give you some retrospective or customer feedback for improvement. We made sure that our end users, as we workshopped the best practice process for change management, we looked at all these areas from understanding, testing, to support documenting types of change. What does a CAB mean, a change advisory board? How does change feed into release management? What does a post-implementation review look like? What's a forward schedule of change? And this is what we came up with, the as is. The as is, as I detailed what those phases of activity were on the top horizontal: creating it, evaluating it, authorizing it, implementing it, and reviewing it. And there's some swim lanes for what the change owner did, to what the change management function did, and what the CAB, the chain advisory board, did. And as you can see, that's quite basic. There's quite a few things missing. One of them was, what are the different types of changes you can deploy? You don't all have major changes, minor changes, or emergency changes. So we went through an understanding of what a standard change would be, which could be a change that happens quite automatically because it's a routine thing, it's a low risk. What could be a minor change, which is slightly higher risk and a bit more complex, might need a little bit of testing, but can be implemented quite quickly. how does a standard and a minor change differ from a major change in terms of its impact, risk, and complexity, and the impact it can have on multiple teams and functions, and why it needs to be tested and deployed in a successful way. And then a big project change where you're linking IT operational change with a big change, a project change that comes as a demand, as a portfolio piece of work from the business. And finally, emergency change, which needs to address a fault or a failure very rapidly. And where does the CAB coverage come in for those different types of change? We then mapped those different types of change into their to-be process. And as you can see in the swim lanes, what we introduced here, you can see in red, the emergency change, the standard changes in purple, the minor changes and their process flows and their feed into the various swim lanes, including who approves and what the CAB does. We introduced the concept of major change and project changes, as you can see there. So a bit more rigor around their to-be process. And this requires a lot of education, a lot of training, a lot of process mapping, and then a lot of configuration of these processes into your technology service management tools. It was very well perceived. Now, that could sound and that could look very bureaucratic. Well, ITSM can come across very bureaucratic, but in a DevOps world, which is now what we're going to move into, Shyam is going to be talking about how you automate some of these activities and tasks to give you the efficiency. And I'm going to hand over to him to take it to the next stage.
Okay, thank you, Kuldip. So you've heard from Kuldip about the different types of changes you can have. And the base layer is the sort of the standard change, which are the sort of the pre-approved changes. They are low risk, routine work. And then the next level above that is the minor changes, where again, it's of low risk. You don't really need to have a CAB involved. So one of my most recent clients, again, in a regulated industry, brought me in to find a way to automate the change management process. So they had teams who were adopting DevOps principles and values, and they're starting to release code on a more frequent basis. And one of the things these application development teams were getting frustrated with was the bureaucracy of going through the traditional change management process. So typically 5 days lead time to have your before you can get your change approved, attending a CAB, a change advisory board, providing tons and tons of documentation, which has already been done as part of their software development lifecycle, but having to represent all this information and go through the theatrics, as I call it, of a change management process. And what the client says, look, we have this frustration. Can you come in and help us improve this process? So the client themselves, they had a couple of really good prerequisites. They had a very good monitoring capability that they set up for all these DevOps type applications, and they had an automated governance platform which captured all the documentation, all the artifacts you typically expect to see in a change as part of the change management process. So things like testing artifacts, approvals, and so on, everything is being captured in this automated platform. So what we did was to adopt a standard change for what we call Agile Changes. So these were applications which were deemed to be low risk and be working in these small increments. So the risk of them causing a failure was nominal, and getting them to be able to use this Agile Change template. So some of the things we did was to make sure these applications had a high proportion of automated testing, a high proportion of automated deployment. If you look at the history of these applications releasing, they were releasing frequently, safely, and of course, there's always a one-to-one relationship between a release record and the change request. So with all these criteria that we needed, we're able to offer this agile change process for these teams to follow. And over the process of 18 months, we've been able to see some really interesting things coming out in terms of metrics. So application teams are releasing 8 times more frequently. So that's the number of releases they're doing is gone up. 18% of this organization's release this organization are using the Agile Change template, and that makes up roughly about 220 releases a month. Typically, we might see one high priority incident each month. So on the back of 220 releases, maybe one high priority incident. The cost savings, now this is just a finger in the air because we've not been able to measure the ins and outs of it. We'd not be able to determine what's the benefit of getting to market quicker, right? Go to market quicker. But typically on the effort side, on the going through, removing the bureaucracy of going through a cab, of logging change requests and waiting 5 days, and being limited by when you can actually do a code deployment, we're looking at roughly about $5,000 cost saving per release. You start doing the sums, we're close to $750,000, almost $1 million a month, looking at the current volumes, and that's only increasing as we go month to month. Now, the benefits here, we've not even included the software aspects, right? So from the people aspects, now the developers don't have to work weekends to do the code deployments. They don't have to work out of hours. They can, because their changes are so small and incremental, they can actually do it live during the business day. Now, in a regulated industry, this is unheard of. You'd never see this happening in the regulated industry. They always have to do it out of hours or at a time when there's minimal disruption to the business. So, it is possible. It just takes the right leadership and the right mindset and a desire to want to adopt something like this.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a point here. You've seen me present around quite a high-level ITSM change process with different types of change, including a standard change. It can come across very bureaucratic, and these things do, but they're important to have those processes in place. But what Shyam has done with his case study here is taking to the next stage. He's actually automated standard types of changes in a regulated environment to give agility. Agility means smaller chunks of changes going in more frequently, giving you lots of cost savings, reducing risk, and that just can't be underestimated. Do you want to move on to your next one, Shyam?
Sure, yes. So the next one is about incident management. So this is a process where if there's an unexpected failure with a business service or an application or a customer product service, whatever you want to call it, there is a structured incident management process which ITIL sort of provides you with a framework for. Typically, what we find is, again, you've got a service desk which takes a call from a customer, they log a ticket. If they think it's a high priority incident, then they'll log it as such, and they'll mobilize a major incident management, major incident manager to basically start a bridge, and this major incident manager will then start looking up, who's the relevant person to bring onto this bridge, and run the bridge, and then start doing the troubleshooting and diagnosis and facilitate all this stuff. And this stuff, if it's a high priority incident, typically 1 or 2 hours and the clock's ticking, it's not great. If you're working at the weekend and something kicks off on a Saturday night, at 11 o'clock at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, it's not pleasant, right? And you start hauling in engineers and developers, it's not pleasant for them either. Everyone's got families and they're trying to get some rest, and it's just rubbish. So one of the things one of my other clients did was to introduce some automation just to try and streamline the administration of this process. So there are some prerequisites for automating incident management process. You do need to be able to monitor the full stack of your IT service. So the infrastructure layer, the security layer, the application layer. Make sure you're logging stuff. Make sure you can start creating events. So based on certain conditions, an event is identified and generated, a ticket is logged, and so on. And what we do is we automate the detection of the incident, the logging of it, the assignment, so who does this ticket need to go to, and of course, if there are some commonly occurring issues or incidents, then you run some automatic scripts to try and do things like reboot the server or reprovision or provide some extra storage capacity automatically, so you're not actually getting engineers to do mundane repetitive work. You can extend this further by using your IT service management tooling to try and automate the workflow. And some organizations are even using chatbots, things like Slack or whatever, to automate the process. All of a sudden, you don't have to think about what's the next step in my incident management process. You just type an incident into a bot, and then it starts prompting you for the relevant information before it spins up a ticket and assign it to the relevant person for you. So it's, the technology is there, the capability is there to do this. It's really fantastic stuff. But what you do need for this incident management automation is a very accurate and extensive configuration management system. You absolutely have to know what's going on in your estate. You have to know what components make up your service, the configuration items, whether it's a server, a network device, where it's located, what sort of applications running on it, the full Monty when it comes to configuration management service. That in itself is a challenge, but if you can get over that, then it opens up all this additional capability and automation you can do. So the benefits of this incident management automation, again, this is real world results here. The response to a high priority incident is about 5 minutes. Typically, manual processes, you're talking half an hour. 5 minutes is a fantastic step in the right direction. And as a result of having response time and having this automated logging and so on, is the mean time to recovery is around about 40 to 60%. There is no ambiguity about who needs to attend a major incident call because it's all been defined and scripted. All the information you need to see about the systems and the services are available from logs and telemetry. And of course, the other benefit again is for your staff is a reduction in toil. So the repetitive, low-value routine tasks are automated, which means your operations engineers don't have to context switch and they don't get distracted from some of the projects that they're working on.
Thank you, Shyam. Do you want to move on into some of the key DevOps findings and research that you've done?
Okay, so I'm conscious, a large proportion, I was thinking about 50% of our audience are thinking about DevOps. And one of the good things about this DevOps movement is there's lots of research being done. There's a lot of hard data out there. And one of the things that happens every year is an organization called DORA, which I think is a DevOps Research Association, conducts a survey of organizations around the world. So this is a massive research effort every year, and they produce a report every year, just summarize the results of their surveys. And this one here, I've taken some extracts from last year, so State of DevOps Report 2019, and these are some of the headlines. So what they're seeing is they're starting to classify high-performing organizations into different groups, and elite is the top of the pack, and they're the ones who are pulling away from the rest of the organizations. And you can see some astounding figures here, right? So the frequency for code deployments is 208 times more frequent code deployments. And you look at the FANGs, your Facebooks, your Amazons, your Netflix, they are actually releasing hundreds of times a day. You and I as consumers don't see it, but that's the volume and the scale they're working at. These same elite performers are, the lead time from committing code to deploying it to a production environment is 106 times faster than other organizations. Their ability to recover from instances over 2,500 times faster. There's some insane numbers here. Every time I read this out, it's just, it still baffles me. I just keep saying, am I seeing the right numbers here? And of course, as a consequence of releasing more frequently and having these short lead times from code to commit to deploy, is the failure rate is 7 times lower. So some astounding numbers there, and this is hard data that the DevOps Research Association is coming up with. And then some of the footnotes here, being able to deliver software reliably and quickly is the heart of the technology and organizational performance. Productivity can result in improvements to work-life balance and reduce burnouts. Again, you got to look after your staff, and that's a key. And it's one of the key points to keep meeting with DevOps transformations. And of course, the change approval process. So I've talked about my first-hand experience of the Agile Change template. Kuldip's talk about improving the change process, and that's what this is about, right? If you actually handle the change approval process correctly, you can improve the speed and stability and reduce burnout.
Thank you.
So what's the value? What's the benefits and value of BizDevSecOps? And this is 4 generic drivers I've used here. The first is customer satisfaction. You're in business to make sure you're selling products and services to make sure your customers are satisfied. How does DevOps help? Well, it's make sure that all the work being done is business driven, right? So we talk about BizDevSecOps. The business is always features in that that value stream, and the value, of course, there is clear ownership, making sure that the ways of working are matched to a volatile market. In terms of value and risk, well, there are continual feedback loops. That's one of the key principles of DevOps, is having lots of feedback loops. You can ensure your feedback is fast. And what this means is your deployments are reliable, they are frequent, and they're transparent. So as in, you're not going to have any crisis because the deployments are such low risk. One of the key ones here again is short time to market. So if there's a change, like we're looking at the COVID disruption, you can actually respond quicker to the changing market needs. And what it means is, from a DevOps perspective, we create fast flow. So we make sure the processes are optimized and automated as much as we can, making sure there is no rework and there's no delay. So you can get your product out to market as soon as possible. And of course, the last key business driver is efficient operations, because you're having these multidisciplinary cross-functional teams collaborating very closely together. That removes the siloed thinking and this traditional annual budgeting stuff. Everything is focused on each time you do an iteration, you make sure you fund it for that iteration. So those are the key, sort of the sort of 4 key business drivers and benefits of DevOps.
Thank you, Shyam. I'm going to kind of bring this all together and to summarize some of the kind of key takeaways before we go into a final survey. And I think Shyam has kind of articulated very well, having transparency in delivery, smaller chunks, automating instant change in an agile way, working with the business in an agile way, bringing trust iteratively and reliably, so reducing risk, breaking silos, making them lean across your value chain in a horizontal way is absolutely what brings around the agility in IT and business to give the numbers that research in the Dora report says. And in my view, this is where business and IT need to own the change. This is not just a responsibility for IT to make deployments quicker, faster, better. It's to business to champion that and understand there's a different way of working. It's a different culture. It's a different mindset. It's a safer environment. You can experiment. You're continually learning. You're looking at feedback loops to optimize your value streams, reducing toil, breaking down silos, and working in that collaborative manner. And I think the responsibility is not just on the CIO and his team, it's a business working and sponsoring that. And all I'm just trying to show in this slide is the future IT world, or the IT leadership can be the champions for it, but it needs the business to be part of them. And it's all about that iterative delivering those iterative business outcomes and those benefits using the agile way, frameworks and automation to give you those tremendous figures. And that's all I really wanted to say on that, to kind of sum it up. The key webinar takeaways before we move into our final survey is, I absolutely understand that COVID has had a massive impact across organizations. And we're going to have to be very, very prudent with our IT investments and digital investments. But if you can articulate their value from a effectiveness or efficiency or a growth perspective or a compliance perspective, I think those are the business cases that are going to dominate going forward. I think hopefully we've shown you that the BizDevSecOps maturity model can help you to think about where you are on your DevOps journey, including the business, and articulate where you might want to go to develop that value stream optimization strategy, aligning business and IT. We showed you the 6 pillars. We've extended the CALMS principles from DevOps to ensure that it has the leadership and strategy pillar in it, part of the maturity model, and it can aid that journey. The IT function has to work with the business to ensure that BizDevSecOps works and to bring around that cultural mindset of the agile mindset. And that's no mean feat, because organizational change management is not easy. It's a people thing. It requires people to unlearn things, and then for people to learn things, and that takes time. Everybody is different. And I think from the research and the case studies that we've demonstrated, I think high-performing agile organizations have over the last 5 to 10 years have had significant benefits from DevOps kind of implementations: speed of delivery, visibility, enhanced customer satisfaction, reduction in risk, efficient IT operations, and better morale from staff. Okay, Shyam, we'll go into our final poll.
So the last question for the audience is, for those of you who are adopting BizDevSecOps, what sort of words describe your pain point? So this is one where you can just put in a few words, and we'll have a little cloud bubble, which will come up at the end with your responses.
I love the first one.
Yep, that's a good one. Yep.
I bet you that's Christian.
So again, just the question is, what words describe your pain points when adopting BizDevSecOps? What sort of challenges do you face, or what frustrations are you experiencing?
Guys, this is a safe environment. We're not going to be sharing this with anybody.
Yep.
So resistance to change. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a theme emerging. I know we only got 2 data points. Single vision. Okay.
Myopic vision. Yep. Culture. Yep.
Yep. It's usually corporate culture. Have you heard of the phrase
Wow.
culture eats strategy for breakfast?
Yep.
Yep. Oh, look at that. I wonder who put that. Culture.
Someone experiencing a lot of pain here.
Wow.
You can see
Wow.
it. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. But this goes hand in hand, right? So this is not just a transformation with a small t. It's DevOps, BizDevSecOps transformation. It is wide ranging. It is a true complex second order change to an organization. It has to be done properly with leadership from the top. That's exactly why we're seeing the kind of pain points that people are calling out here, right? Yep.
I think DevOps, I'm sorry, Shyam, I think DevOps is a hidden gem in IT. It needs to be with the business. Business need to embrace it and understand it to bring about that transformational change. Because what we're advocating here is business change, or digital business change. And this list of items are a lot of the common problems when you have organizational business or digital business transformation not done well.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to the audience for your input. I mean, this is really insightful. It's good. It's it's the kind of thing we see in our clients all the time.
Sure. Okay, I think we're going to open. I'm going to stop. Thank you for your inputs. Really fantastic. Very insightful. We're going to switch back to the chat function and try to grab some questions. I am going to, because I'm going to take us all off mute. But let's pick up the questions first. Okay, I've got a message from Sandhu here. Thanks for the session. Somebody who's trying to build a BizDevSecOps model, what are the key technical skills, if any, I should be looking at individually and within the team to progress? Do you want to take that, Shyam?
Yeah, there's a couple of dimensions here, Sandhu. So again, it's a good question. It's a difficult one as well in terms of what organizations are doing in the BizDevSecOps space. So traditionally, what organizations are doing is say, yeah, okay, let's do DevOps, quote unquote, and they'll hire a bunch of DevOps engineers to come along and create or put in place this continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline, right? To the CI/CD pipeline. Plenty of technical products out there, so you need to have an element of software development, a bit of setting up.
Oh, hold on.
Thank you, Kuldip. I got muted
Sorry,
there.
it's my
Yeah.
fault. I was trying to get everybody off unmute. So I was trying to mute. Sorry, I apologize.
Okay. Yeah. So where was I? Yeah. So you do need so some core technical skills if you're going to have these development teams. You know, a developers team will have a combination of doing some application development, so they have some coding skills. They'll be able to use some tools in the CI/CD pipeline, so tools, things like Jenkins, using some testing tools, some security tools, and stuff like SonarQube, whatever. It just really depends on what your respective application development teams need. So there is a set of proper techie skills that you need. But going beyond that, if you're going to the wider change model, then it's having an understanding and some experience in how to lead and manage organizational change, being able to engage with your C-level stakeholders plus other parts of the business.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that is one of the areas we haven't come because we haven't got the time, and we're quite happy to do this later, is developing that CI/CD pipeline of development work, right? And that requires all those tools, right from requirements to design to build to implement to test. There's a whole suite of tools, and in fact there's a proliferation of tools, probably too many.
Yeah.
But there's choice. So absolutely, we can go into that in the future. Another question. Shyam, I'll throw this one again at you. What advice can be given to balance agile transformation and adherence to governance standards?
Okay, so Alibaba, absolutely, you still need to stick with the organizational governance standards. Just because you're trying to be agile and do things quickly doesn't mean that you throw your governance standards out the door. So if I go back to relate back to the Agile Change template that I put in place for one of my clients, we absolutely did stick with the client's governance standards, right? The risk control framework was still in place, was still valid, was still applicable. But what we made sure that we did was to automate that governance stuff. So we took all the checks and balances and put it into an automated platform. So that was getting captured automatically. You didn't have to have developers and engineers having to write screens of documents or copy it off into some massive release document because it's all done automatically. That's the key thing. Just because you want to release faster doesn't mean you have to chuck your governance standards out the door. That is still key to your operating model.
Yeah, and I just add to that, I would say DevOps needs ITSM. So the ITSM processes I would view as your governance mechanisms and your
Absolutely, yes,
controls.
that's exactly what it is. Yes,
Yeah,
you
and
still need a change management process. You
yeah,
still need a release management process.
yeah.
You still do have to have your checks and balances, making sure your ops teams are ready for the new releases that are coming through.
Absolutely. And then your agility comes from your culture, and then your automation, and you're reducing waste, getting rid of the toil, breaking down the barriers, the silos, and getting the collaboration working across horizontally rather than vertically across teams.
Correct, yes. And releasing faster and
Yeah.
quicker, right? Small increments. And that ties into the next question from Ram, right? So he's
Okay.
talking about what's the bare minimum investment. Here's the thing. So one of the things we talk about with the DevOps transformation is start small, right? Focus on one value stream, one product value stream, get a team together, a cross-functional team, get them to release something based around that small product value stream. What this means is, one, you're demonstrating that you can do this within your organization. People tend to respond better to change or to new concepts when they can see something that they can touch and feel in front of them. So conceptually, telling people you want to do it and having massive budgets doesn't really work, right? Because then you have to have lots of justification. You're going to spend a lot of time mobilizing teams and having big grand programs. Start small, focus on little iteration, demonstrate the value, get the platform or forums where you can demonstrate and showcase what you've achieved, and then get more teams involved to try and work on other product value streams. So it starts small and just keep working away incrementally, right? So each time you demonstrate the value, then you can go to your finance, your CFO, and say, hey, look, we've achieved this with this amount of money. We want to do something else that's going to be a bit more money, and that way you get funding for it. And before you know it, 2 or 3 years down the road, you've got a whole bunch of teams working in cross-functional ways across a number of different value streams.
I think you just cut out for a second. It's not a problem. I don't think we missed much, but I'll answer the next question as a kind of add-on to what you said, Shyam. You said, do you recommend a specific learning journey for the team to champion and adopt? And I would say, back to that, pick a team, pick a platform, pick a service, small team, cross-functional, optimize it, reduce it, look at the value stream, and get innovators working with you to champion the change before you then go to the early adopters. I think sometimes the change initiatives I've seen, we've gone for this big bang approach. I think this is going to be incremental change, showing the value, small, and then scaling it. The big bang does work if you get the sponsorship, but morale and confidence erodes really quickly. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and there's more pressure as well, because all of a sudden you've got your organization, your stakeholders to commit to a massive budget, so the expectations are high and unrealistic. My suggestion is start small, get a small budget together, tackle little things. So I was at a conference last year where we had somebody from one of the insurance companies, and these two guys, right, in their own spare time, they had started running a proof of concept for taking an element of their product and running it in a cloud service. And I think it was something simple like taking payments, for example. Yeah, you could worry about your PCI stuff, but these guys thought about everything and they came up with a cloud-based alternative, which was more stable, which could scale up. So if there were certain promotions that sales were running for the insurance company, this capability, this product value could actually scale up dynamically, right? And they demonstrated that to the rest of the organization. They took it to the board and they got some more funding to try something else out, to work on another product. And that's how you do it. You chip away with small things and improve your works before asking for more money for other things. So in terms of specific learning, I think that the first thing to do is you probably have the skills already. You will have software developers, you will have engineers. Software developers are a very creative, dynamic bunch. They will know what they need to do. They will have some ideas. But the main thing is to get these teams to make their own, to form their own cross-functional teams, right? And it doesn't have to be big. It could be the size of what the pizza size, right? So if you can feed, how many people do you need? Can you feed with one pizza, right? That's the Amazon model. So go for that approach, small, lean, and then try something out, and then demonstrate the value to other stakeholders.
Thank you. I haven't seen any other questions, but we're happy to take. People should be able to unmute themselves if they have a burning question. But I hope Suvi Raj had a thumbs up for the response. So, and I think is that Ali Haji? Is that Ali Haji from TCS days? I think it is. So nice to see you on the call. And I recognize quite a lot of other names as well. Any burning questions before I just kind of sum up and next steps? Oh, Christian, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Sanando. Thank you very much. Yes, it is the guy I know from TCS, my old buddy. Thank you. Yeah. I'm yeah, absolutely love to hear. You can say a few words if you want to, if you can unmute yourself. But I was going to. It's now just over the 1 hour 15. All I was going to say was 2 or 3 things. Thank you for all attending. You've been awesome. The inputs are great. We'll have the recording. It'll be on the event link page. I have a whole series going. The next one, there's going to be 2 more coming. One on RPA, and the second one on digital transformation. And I think Ram's on here. I'm also going to be doing a webinar series for the BCS community. So Ram on here. Hopefully we'll get that going. And I want to thank Shyam. Shyam, you've been awesome. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Kuldip. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, and see you soon.
Bye-bye.